From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. The voices you're about to hear are separated by 70 years. But if you close your eyes, they sound like they're in the same room.
We're going to keep communists, Marxists, and socialists out of America.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many.
The first voice, Donald Trump in 2025. And the second, Senator Joseph McCarthy in the 1950s. Different decades, different enemies. But the same stagecraft, fear dressed up as patriotism, suspicion aimed at classrooms and labs and the people inside them. And the cost of that fear so long ago? America lost trust, it lost talent, and the great engine of innovation sputtered. And now, the echo is back. And nowhere is that more clear than in the story of one man, Qian Xuesen.
He was one of those as part of a program that the United States put into place to bring the best and the brightest from China to the United States.
That's William Kirby, a professor at Harvard and a China scholar. Qian was, by all accounts, a brilliant scientist, so loyal to the U.S. that he was invited to work on the Manhattan Project, so gifted that he helped found JPL, the precursor to NASA. He should have been one of America's great success stories, but instead, he's become one of its greatest cautionary tales. Because when the Red Scare came for him, the U.S. not only lost Qian, it handed his genius to China.
Truman's Navy secretary would later state that was, quote, the stupidest thing this country ever did.
I'm Dina Temple-Rustin, and this is Click Here, a podcast about all things cyber and intelligence. We tell true stories about the people making and breaking our digital world. And right now, campuses are buzzing as students come back to school. Backpacks slung over shoulders, coffee lines stretching out into the quad. But this year, something feels off. Entire cohorts of international students are missing. Research labs that once pulsed with discovery have gone quiet. It feels like déjà vu, an echo from the Cold War. Only this time, the tools are different. Not blacklists or subpoenas, but travel bans, slashing funding, suspicion, disguised in a lab coat. And that raises the question, what happens when a nation trades openness for caution and curiosity for control? Because history tells us the cost isn't just political. It can hollow out the very engine of innovation. Stay with us. Support for Click Here comes from Clean My Mac. If you're like me, your cloud drives are packed with files you don't actually need. Sync duplicates, old backups, random junk just gobbling up storage. Clean My Mac takes care of that with a new cloud cleanup feature. It connects to your accounts on iCloud, OneDrive, and Google Drive and scans to find large space wasters, both in cloud storage and on your device. And while my Mac health is apparently excellent, Clean My Mac found 8 gigabytes of junk on my computer and tons of duplicate downloads, and it removed a bunch of leftover applications I never use. Who knew? And this happens locally on my Mac, so my data stays safe. Clean My Mac has a whole suite of other features too, including their Moonlight anti-malware engine. With just a click, the anti-malware tool scans and removes viruses, ensuring your Mac remains threat-free. Not everything deserves eternal storage, so why pay for it? Get tidy today with Clean My Mac. Try it free for 7 days and use the promo code CLICK to save an additional 20% on your purchase at cleanmymac.com. From Recorded Future News, this is Click Here. More than a century ago, China owed the United States millions of dollars. It was the price of defeat, reparations after a brief war at the turn of the 20th century. Harvard historian William Kirby explains.
The Qing Empire lost the Boxer War and had to pay a huge indemnity to the victorious Western powers who had defeated the Qing.
But the U.S. made an unusual choice. Instead of collecting, it invested.
The Americans gave a large part of this indemnity back to China, used to educate young Chinese to study in the United States.
It was a scholarship meant to spread democracy, a program that brought some of China's brightest minds to the U.S. And that's how a young engineering prodigy named Qian Xuesen arrived in the United States, on that kind of a scholarship.
He came from an elite family. He finished at the very top of his class, graduating really in a period of great promise and growing prosperity in China in 1934.
Qian landed at MIT, then moved west to Caltech. He finished his master's degree in just a year and went on to earn a PhD under one of the most celebrated physicists of the era, Theodore von Karman.
Von Karman would later describe him as his most brilliant student and impressed by his quickness of mind.
Von Karman became more than just a professor to Qian. He became a mentor. And when Qian began thinking about returning to China, it was von Karman who convinced him to stay.
He persuaded him to stay at Caltech, stating that doing scientific research in the U.S. will strengthen the anti-fascist force for China.
That was, in fact, the point of the scholarship program, to expose brilliant Chinese students to American values and hope they'd return home ready to fight fascism and steer China toward democracy. Qian seemed convinced. He stayed in Pasadena and joined a group of engineers doing some early rocket testing.
People who became known by friends as the Suicide Squad because a number of their experiments exploded. Not lethally, at least as far as I know.
Those explosions weren't accidents. They were experiments, the spark of what would eventually become NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Then came World War II. And even though the U.S. still hadn't given Qian citizenship, the country trusted him deeply. He was brought into the Manhattan Project, commissioned as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He was sent to Europe to interrogate Nazi rocket scientists. And in the years that followed, he decided to make the U.S. his permanent home. But his timing couldn't have been worse.
He applied for U.S. citizenship to be a naturalized citizen in 1949, the same year that the Chinese Communist Party came to power.
That year changed everything. Because as the Cold War escalated, suspicion in America shifted. China was no longer seen as a wartime ally. It was suddenly the enemy.
The fall of China to the communists remains a subject for intense debate. How did this happen?
America's Warren Austin then accuses the Chinese communists of open and notorious aggression.
Chinese communist regime, by its actions, has caused grave doubts to people all over the world.
The fear-mongering overtook reason. And it's telling just how easily it crowded out the facts, because not even Qian's decades of scientific breakthroughs could protect him, not even his top-secret wartime service.
Professor Qian, we're with the U.S. Immigration Service. I'm Agent Emerson.
This is from a mainland Chinese movie about Qian.
We need to have a little talk with you, Professor.
And Qian suddenly found himself in the crosshairs.
The director of the Jet Propulsion Lab had come to believe that there were some spies within the enterprise, and his suspicion fell on anyone Jewish and anyone Chinese.
The FBI placed Qian under house arrest and investigated him for 5 years. But they found no espionage, no invisible ink, no blueprints smuggled to Beijing. And while he had his defenders...
Von Karman supported him. Oppenheimer, J. Robert Oppenheimer, who had worked with Qian on the Manhattan Project, supported him.
It wasn't enough. In 1955, Qian was deported as part of a larger prisoner exchange, and he was furious.
He told reporters at the time that he would never step foot in America again, and he never did.
The United States had exiled one of its greatest scientific minds, and he wasn't alone.
Between the years 1949 and 1956, 129 returned Chinese scientists went to work directly for, as Qian did, the Chinese Academy of Sciences.
It was almost ironic. Just as the U.S. fear of China was reaching its peak, the country handed Beijing a gift. Qian went on to become the father of China's space and missile programs. And many of the other Chinese scientists, they helped build the country's nuclear weapons, its robotics, its energy systems. Together, these are the very technologies that today challenge American power. Universities and Congress eventually pushed back, and the students came back too. America opened its doors again, and the results were staggering.
30 to 40% of the PhD students in the leading American research universities are internationals, coming here for the opportunity.
And most of them stayed. 3/4 of those PhD students built their lives here, starting companies, fueling innovation. Tech firms now make up 60% of all H-1B visa sponsorships. More than half of the U.S.'s billion-dollar startups have at least one immigrant founder. For a while, it looked like America had learned its lesson. But this spring, it all came roaring back when President Trump began questioning why so many foreign students are here in the first place.
We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to...
And here's where the past really grabs the present by the collar. That voice of paranoia, it didn't just start with Trump. It started with Roy Cohn, who sharpened his teeth alongside Senator Joseph McCarthy during the Red Scare, and then, decades later, whispered in Donald Trump's ear, long before he ever went into politics.
One thing we have to understand at the outset is that the Communist Party is not a political party. It's a criminal conspiracy.
That edge, the sharp defense of fear as strategy, still cuts through. And Harvard historian William Kirby says what it bred then, it's breeding again now.
It's a moment which reinforces the sense of mutual paranoia of the 1950s, which is healthy for nobody.
The Trump administration is threatening to revoke student visas. And while the president has gone back and forth on this, the threat hangs over more than 275,000 Chinese students. And the pressure isn't just on them. Research dollars are frozen, deals are being cut. And the cost? That's harder to measure. Because America's edge in science was never a birthright. It was built, brick by brick, on openness, on funding, on trust. And now, every one of those pillars is under threat.
We're already trying to run twice as hard to keep up with China now. This is a severe body blow to the U.S. national security, let alone our economy.
When we come back, it's not just who we're turning away, it's what we're choosing not to build. Stay with us. Support for Click Here comes from Claude AI. Claude is the AI for minds that don't stop at good enough. It's the collaborator that actually understands your entire workflow and thinks with you, not for you. Whether you're debugging code at midnight or strategizing for your next business move, Claude extends your thinking to tackle the problems that matter. Who needs a regular search when you can have a conversation with Claude about what you're looking for? And, unlike some of the other AI helpers I've used, Claude doesn't retain information from previous conversations, so it's private. Ready to tackle bigger problems? Sign up for Claude today and get 50% off Claude Pro when you use my link, claude.ai/clickhere. That's claude.ai/clickhere right now for 50% off your first 3 months of Claude Pro. And that includes access to all the features mentioned in today's episode. claude.ai/clickhere.
What the hell is going on right now? And why is it happening like this? At Wired, we're obsessed with getting to the bottom of those questions on a daily basis. And maybe you are too. I'm Katie Drummond, the global editorial director of Wired, and I'm hosting our new podcast series, The Big Interview. Each week, I'll sit down with some of the most interesting, provocative, and influential people who are shaping our right now. Big interview conversations are fun.
I want a shark that
eats the internet,
that turns it all off.
Unfiltered and unafraid.
So in a lot of ways, I try to be an antidote to the unimaginable faucet of reactionary content that you see online, to the best of my ability.
Every week, we're going to offer you the ultimate luxury of our times, meaning and context.
True or false? You, Brian Johnson, the man sitting across from me, one day, at some point, as of yet undefined in the future, you will die.
False.
Tell me more. Listen to the big interview right now in the same place you find Wired's Uncanny Valley podcast. Subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts.
For decades, the U.S. led the world in innovation. But now?
The narrative is changing from 10 years ago, China was a mass producer of cheap goods. Today, in more and more fields, China is now becoming the world's chief innovator as well as producer.
This is Cole McFall. He's a senior research analyst at Georgetown's Center for Security and Emerging Technology. He says China has been making a massive bet on science and technology, what he calls S&T, and that bet is paying off.
By any kind of S&T metric that you want to pick, China's catching up to, and in some cases surpassing the United States, whether that's kind of number of scientific papers, paper citations, number of patents. China's really catching up.
And here's the twist. This playbook isn't new. China borrowed it from us.
Science and engineering leads started in World War II with federal funding and continued for 80 years until this administration.
That's Steve Blank, a Stanford entrepreneurship professor. And he says America's edge wasn't inevitable, it was built with purpose. Before World War II, federal funding for research barely existed. Then, the war changed everything.
They proposed something insane at the time, which said, look, we ought to do military research and development, not yet weapons, but military R&D in universities.
That decision birthed the institutions we take for granted now, like NASA, the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health. And it laid the groundwork for breakthroughs that rewrote modern life. Things like GPS.
Turn right.
And the internet. MRIs. The flu vaccine, microchips, and touchscreens. In China, they saw how successful this approach was and followed suit. Cole McFall again.
In 1986, for example, China establishes its National Natural Science Foundation of China. And the inspiration of that just comes straight from the U.S. National Science Foundation.
They built their own NIH. They created a NASDAQ-style exchange to fund homegrown innovation, and they poured money into it. More than a tenfold increase in just 2 decades. Then they started to bring their scientists back home.
China copied our innovation ecosystem, not because they wanted to build commercial technology, but they wanted to replicate our national security kind of innovation ecosystem.
And it's working.
So in 5G, photovoltaics, advanced battery technology, commercial drones, and others, China is a global leader, and some would say the top leader in those technologies.
This was never just an economic race. It was always about security, which is why the Trump administration's downshift feels like more than just a blow to scientific discovery. It feels dangerous. Since April, the National Science Foundation has cut more than 1,600 research grants. Billions in funding gone, at the very moment when innovation has never mattered more to national security.
And we essentially just handed the golden ring to China.
They've read the playbook, and now they're writing the next chapter. Given all that, it raises a question. Why now? Maybe the answer's in a seating chart at Trump's inauguration.
In the second row next to SpaceX and Tesla CEO Elon Musk was Apple CEO Tim Cook, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, and Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
The seating chart wasn't an accident. It was a signal that the Trump administration didn't see the future of science and technology running through government labs or public institutions anymore. It could well be handed off to them, to the private sector. But Steve Blank says if you stop the story there, you miss the bigger picture.
It's very easy to believe that, all we need are a bunch of entrepreneurs and innovators to move faster than government agencies, and therefore we're done. CEOs seem to think their technology came from the stork and don't understand the seed corn that was planted for years or decades.
Because those same companies that look like self-made empires, They were built on government investment. Take Google. It didn't just sprout fully formed out of Silicon Valley. It grew out of a federally funded research program at Stanford. Because the kind of science that leads to real breakthroughs doesn't turn a profit overnight. Governments can afford to wait years, sometimes decades. Most industries can't. And that's the gap Cole McFall says we should all be worried about.
I mean, really, the private sector's ability to fund basic research is very concentrated in the biotech sector. And so, like, what about electrical engineering and mechanical engineering and computer science and these other critical technology fields that we know will define U.S.-China tech competition for years to come?
And that's the thing. Restrictions made today don't just shape the next quarter, they shape the next generation. The people making those decisions, the ones deciding where America will lead and where it will lag, often know very little about how science actually works.
You have people who have probably never run a science lab making long-term decisions about who's going to be the leader in science and engineering, not tomorrow, but in 5 or 10 years.
The administration has defended its cuts to research funding and visas, framing them in part as ideological. This time, the Red Scare rhetoric isn't about communism, it's about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which makes this all feel uncomfortably familiar, and shows why Qian Xuesen, the brilliant scientist we talked about earlier who was sent back to China, isn't just a cautionary tale. He's a warning.
You know, science doesn't discriminate. That's the mistake that's being made here in confusing ideology with science and engineering. Consequences, I think, have been played out multiple times when you try to do that.
And when fear trumps reason, the institutions designed to push back often don't. During the Red Scare, it took years for Congress, the courts, and even the press to find their footing, to finally say out loud what so many had only whispered. And then a voice broke through.
We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason. If we dig...
That voice belonged to Edward R. Murrow, one of the most trusted journalists in America, and one of the few willing to stand up and say the emperor had no clothes.
The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear, he merely exploited it.
So Qian Xuesen's story isn't just history, it's a mirror. And if we're not careful, we may see our own reflection, looking back.
Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Good night, and good luck.
This is Click Here.
If you're looking for a daily guide to cybersecurity news and policy, sign up for the Cyber Daily from Recorded Future News. It serves up the day's most interesting and important cyber stories from our sister publication, The Record, and then aggregates all of the big cyber stories you might have missed from news outlets around the world. Just go to therecord.media and click on Cyber Daily to get all you need to know about the world of cybersecurity right in your inbox.
Here are some of the top cyber and intelligence stories from the past week. It's Tuesday, September 16th. And we start in Utah. Charlie Kirk, the right-wing activist, was fatally shot on the campus of Utah Valley University. After a 2-day manhunt, officials have a suspect in custody.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
That's Utah Governor Spencer Cox confirming that the alleged gunman, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, had been turned in by a family member. Investigators had sifted through hours of security footage, and facial recognition software had come up empty. The FBI offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the suspect, and that's when the public, not technology, delivered the break. Meanwhile, online, Elon Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, was falsely insisting that Kirk had survived the attack. The truth, and a graphic video of the killing, was impossible to avoid. But it raises, once again, old questions about what we see on our screens, and whether platforms like X and Instagram should do more to filter their content. Last week, the Trump administration announced that the dual hat arrangement, one commander leading both the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command, will be allowed to continue.
One commander could ensure unity of effort between these two organizations.
That's a reversal from Trump's embrace of the Project 2025 plan, which envisioned splitting the posts. Trump even fired the last dual hat, General Timothy Hawk, in what seemed like a move to clear the way for a change. But senior officials now say that unraveling a 15-year structure could take years, and it's too costly and too complex, at least for now. So for the moment, Army Lieutenant General William Hartman will hold both titles.
OpenAI has signed a $300 billion deal with Oracle. That is one of the largest contracts of its kind.
OpenAI, the scrappy startup that brought you ChatGPT, is now teaming up with a tech giant, Oracle. They've signed a $300 billion deal to work together to build massive AI data centers all over the country over the next 5 years. The project is called Stargate, and it will demand some 4.5 gigawatts of power. That's about 2 Hoover Dams worth of electricity. Construction is already getting underway in Texas, and the cost? Astronomical. The scale? Unlike anything the industry has ever seen. And finally, a story about technology not dividing us, but reuniting us. Every pet owner's worst nightmare involves a cracked window or an open gate.
She took off running, and she got out of the gate, and she was lost.
Enter Petco's Love Lost, an AI-powered database that allows you to upload a photo, and facial recognition software scans thousands of shelter images and vet records for a match.
Her picture was the first one that popped up. And I was like, that's her, that's her.
Since Love Lost's launch, there's been more than 100,000 confirmed reunions. A small but powerful reminder that sometimes machines really can bring something home.
Today's episode was written and produced by Dana Temple-Raston, Sean Powers, Megan Dietrich, Zach Hirsch, and me, Erica Gaida. I was the lead producer. The episode was edited by Karen Duffin, fact-checked by Darren Ankrum, and contains original music by Ben Livingston, with some other music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, and our illustrator is Megan Goff. Jesse Neiswanger and Jake Cook do our sound design and engineering. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Tune in on Friday for Mic Drop, which features our favorite interview of the week. We'll see you then.
If you're looking for a daily guide to cybersecurity news and policy, sign up for the Cyber Daily from Recorded Future News. It serves up the day's most interesting and important cyber stories from our sister publication, The Record, and then aggregates all of the big cyber stories you might have missed from news outlets around the world. Just go to therecord.media and click on Cyber Daily to get all you need to know about the world of cybersecurity right in your inbox.